Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the Altered TCG World Championship Qualifier. We are live from the Kia Oval in Surrey in London. My name is Ben Fitzpatrick. It's a pleasure to have your company with us here this morning, and joining me throughout the day is Kellen Guy. Kellen, very good morning to you.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Yeah, super stoked to be commentating this event. Should be a really good one. 70 players registered, I believe. And yeah, we're not playing cricket today, despite being at the Kia Oval. But it should be a good one nonetheless.
Absolutely. No, the cricket's going to be safe for me for next week, but that's another story. We are here to focus on the Altered TCG and getting what will be some of the last names registered into that World Championships in Paris next month. This is one of the last World Championship qualifiers that players are going to be able to have an opportunity of, and you can see that we are going to waste no time in getting underway. We have Pierre up against Tiago in round number 1.
Yeah, I do believe that that at least one of these players is a well-known online player whose username is Daggeron. And if that is the case, they're actually a Brazilian player, and they're well known for playing Sigismar. So I'm very much assuming that is Tiago on the right side of the screen. So definitely, I'd say some expert pilots here just to start things off. Of course, it was a random decision, round 1, table 1, just went for it. But yeah, it should definitely be a good one here. Lindaway is a really fun matchup too.
Yeah, Sigismar, definitely one of those heroes that has been seeing quite a bit of play at the moment in the format. I think it's currently tied when I was doing my pre-broadcast checks of one of the most represented and most qualified decks for players that have made their way into the World Championship. So definitely the Audit hero looking like one of the front runners of the format right now. Lindaway, however, Lindaway and more for Izmir hasn't been one that's necessarily been on my radar at the moment, Kellen.
Yeah, for me, that's been a bit of the case as well. Izmir faction in general fell off a lot after the Afanas nerfs recently, or the errata to the Afanas hero. And resultingly, there has been a little bit more diversity in the Izmir heroes that are being played. I know some people are still trying out Afanas, but there's been a lot of teching going on with both Lindaway and Akesha, so...
Absolutely. You can see both players are just getting themselves ready to set things up. The Tumult, those first instances, have already been flipped over on the hero side and the companion side. We are underway. It is going to be Pierre that is going to kick things off, getting that more token, it looks like, as well, and going straight into their first character on that hero expedition.
Yeah, they're just turning that mod directly into an Izmir nurse sacrifice to get some additional stats on that side, but I believe that is likely just to be a 1-for-1 trade here. Daggeron's setting up a Bumblebeat, I believe, just to get that into reserve for some potential later benefit if that can get anchored later on. But yeah, just a reasonable 1-for-1 to start things off. It's interesting to see, actually. I think Lindaway is one of these decks that can be deceptively aggressive. With Sigismar, it's much more obviously so, given that they do every day just get that extra character for free that will always be able to progress if it's on its own. So it's interesting to see, especially just a 1-for-1 trade starting out. I think that actually is pretty good for Lindaway, all things considered.
Absolutely, as it looks like both players are going to go ahead and get the advance, the next card in the Tumult flipping over. So Pierre, it looks like on this turn, in this day, is going to look for mountains, and Tiago is going to be looking for the water over on the companion side over on the top of your screen. Into morning we will go, and the players will get themselves ready for day number 2.
I think one of the things that's going to be particularly important here, if you're on the side of the Lindaway player, is to find a way to not take double expedition losses while finding some card advantage tools. Part of the problem with Lindaway is in some cases that you do need enough gas in order to keep getting value out of your Maw, out of sacrifices. But if you're not able to get enough value, you can fall behind pretty quickly. And Sigismar is a deck that will absolutely punish you while you're trying to gain card advantage. If they're able to turn, for example, a card like a gift of self into a couple boosts at the right time to pick up a couple cards and also be able to win on the tumult on at least one side, I think things are going to look very good for our Lindaway player overall. But for the Sigismar, I mean, we're seeing, I believe they're looking at a couple uniques in hand currently, so that just might be a very powerful punish depending on what they do.
Well, it doesn't look like it is going to be the unique that we're going to start off with. Instead, we're going to try and contest that other side of the tumult here, with Tiago having that first action of this second day. And now over to Pierre to try and figure out a way to either respond, go and contest in, or whether they want to try and go and reclaim a little bit of space over on that left side of the tumult here. It's going to be a payment of 2 mana, but what is it going to be for?
It looked like they're most considering a Baba's Isba, which is never a bad thing, trying to set that up early, especially while you're likely to be losing expeditions on a day where the Sigismar is the starting player anyway. That's because Lindaway, of course, costs the 1 mana in order to make Maw on the days when you are not the starting player. So potentially just looking to set up a Isba that'll help for the later days would be understandable. But no, they're electing for a Chrysalis. I think it's a conservative play, but I like it overall. It conserves a little bit of information as well. I would assume that Tiago is going to have to be thinking about cards like Gift of Self and Baba's Isba, but it does give some potential chances to potentially game him here.
Yeah, and this Chrysalis, a defender, meaning that the expedition can't move forward during dusk, and as soon as it leaves the expedition zone, there is going to be a 2/2/2 Mana Moth Illusion token that will be created to that expedition as well. So now with Tiago, with 2 mana still remaining here, and what we believe to be potentially a couple of uniques that are being looked at in hand.
Yeah, I wonder if either of them are playable here for just the 2 mana remaining. It does look like one of them might be, though. That is a Kakoba, but what does it do?
It's going to give, it looks like, sleep to something over on that other side of the tumult.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. And choosing to do so on an Ordos Attorney as well is definitely never a bad thing. That is essentially guaranteeing that they will find a lot of card advantage, will the Sigismar? Which, I was saying that before, it's a relevant thing for Lindaway to find a way to set up, but it's also very, very strong for Siggy. I mean, we were seeing some of the strength of having sleep on these bureaucrats back in the Waru days of the metagame. Very much not the most standard play pattern for Sigismar, I would say, but it's a very heads-up one. They're going to get a lot of incremental value out of this Attorney. It will cost them expedition progression there, but that is okay as well. And leaving a threat around for later is also perfectly good. Multiple cards in reserve for the Siggy as well. So potential for Lindaway to be able to sacrifice them or sabotage them away, rather. But it's still, looking really good for Siggy, I'd say, for at least the cards that they have access to this game.
Yeah, it does look pretty decent so far. Lindaway is going to have the first move of this day 3 here with Pierre. The days go back and forth between the two players for those that are maybe a little newer to the world of Altered. You win the dice roll, choose whether you want to have that first action on the first day, and then the first actions go back and forth between the two players. As we're going to go ahead and see, it looks like our first landmark of the event getting played down here.
Yeah, that is that Baba's Isba that we were mentioning before. It's a very powerful one for Lindaway specifically, not just because you can get that after you effect that a lot of heroes like to get, but because it enables a timely sacrifice to do so. It's also a card neutral play because they get to draw a card when they play it. So it's definitely a linchpin of the Lindaway strategy. I think an interesting dynamic in this matchup at the moment is that many Sigismars are running permanent removal in the form of license withdrawal, but that is a mana negative trade if they do elect to do that. So I could imagine that the Sigismar might just rather ignore it as long as possible. But over time, there's a lot of potential value that the Lindaway could get out of that Baba's Isba. So we'll see. But looks for the time being, that was just a Aegis Templar that was scouted to make an additional 1/1/1 onto that. That's the hero side here.
He is indeed. And then going over to the companion side is going to go ahead and be Pierre here. I believe, is that the jellyfish that's been played down? Moonlight Jellyfish? It is indeed. It's a 1/0/1. When it's sacrificed, if I was not fleeting, it's going to get put in reserve. But if it is fleeting, you get to draw a card.
Yeah, that's definitely a really nice one. It is that rare, so it does get that additional card draw effect. It's such a nice synergistic play with everything that Lindaway likes to do. Works really well with that Isba we were talking about. But we are seeing now 4 mana getting spent for that Kokoba unique yet again from reserve here. And it looks like it's a draw 2 cards effect when played from reserve, which is very powerful.
It's really, really nice, especially with the way the Altered plays out. You have to draw 2 in that morning of the new day and then put one of them into your mana reserve to be able to pay for costs of these cards. Being able to replenish your hand up after doing all of that is very, very nice indeed. As we're going to see another token is going to go ahead and get created here. We are the first player, so it's not going to cost us the mana to do so, however. And we did sacrifice a character to do that as well, to give this more the 2 boost tokens on it as well. So it is a 2/2/2 right now.
And suddenly we are seeing a ton of card advantage come through for the Lindaway. They are choosing to Gift of Self. That Maw is becoming a 4/4/4, which will outstat on that side at least. But again, that Ortis Attorney that lasted will provide yet another card draw over to our Siggy player, who is going to have a very well-stocked hand. So it's going to be a pretty card-heavy battle going into these later days. Sometimes this matchup does get determined pretty quickly, I would say, especially as one or both players tries to dump their hand, especially if Lindaway is under a lot of pressure and is unable to set up card advantage. But this one is looking very much the opposite of that.
Yeah, definitely. As you can see, again, both players getting movements on either side of the tumult that they have been focusing on for the most of this game. But the other ones haven't really moved so much. Pierre hasn't really been focusing on the companion side so far. Tiago, conversely, hasn't necessarily been focusing too much on the hero side of the tumult. And both of those sides need to touch or overlap for either of these players to be able to win the game. Good start, though, for both so far, getting them onto that middle card of the tumult already and are going into what I believe is day 4.
That it should be. And wow, just looking at the number of cards in hand for both of these players, I for a second I was like, oh, what can I recognize here? And then I saw the grip for the Sigismar. It was just so massive, it's hard to pick out the individual cards. I think there's another Bumblebeat in there, not that they necessarily want to play out the one from hand when they have one that could maybe get anchored from reserve. It is an interesting thing to note, though. In some matchups they would be very heavily enticed to try to play out that one from reserve, but at its additional cost from reserve and playing into a deck that you expect to be pretty removal heavy like Lindaway, it's definitely a little bit of a less desirable play. It looks like they are reading the Moonlight Jellyfish just to confirm something here, probably whether indeed it was that rare and whether they can get the card draw from it if it's sacrificed here, which that should be indeed the dynamic. Chrysalis still hanging out in reserve here for Pierre as well. I think is also a very nice tool. The issue I'm seeing is that for the most part, the Chrysalis is going to struggle to block on the Tumult, given where the Sigismar will be looking to progress for most of these days, that I would assume. We see on both sides, the Sigismar at least, is going to be looking to progress on Mountain, and that is where both the Moonlight Jellyfish and the Chrysalis are a little bit weaker.
Well, it is going to be that jellyfish that is going to be played out from the reserve. Means it is going to get the fleeting. So as soon as it is sacrificed and it is having that fleeting keyword and attachment on it, we are going to get an extra card draw happening for the jellyfish. But as you say, it has that 0 stat line on Mountain here at the moment. And if we're trying to block Tiago off from getting that advance for Mountain, we're not necessarily doing the best job of it early on. Now Tiago is going to go ahead and see a card into the other side and is going to exhaust down that card that is in the reserve.
Yeah, Jack Frost, really nice. I mean, I think this is also the reason why Pierre chose to play out that Moonlight Jellyfish to start off the day. It conserves as much information as possible. They're likely to want to play it out to get some sacrifice value anyway, along with that Baba's Isba, and it avoids exactly that card, Jack Frost, from exhausting it, as well as potential for Orda Spy Sabotage. So I like that. It's a good way to start. Again, they are choosing to yet again play out this second Moonlight Jellyfish here, meaning that currently they're still not really threatening much of anything. It's really going to come down to the remaining cards in hand for the Lindaway, which is one of the strengths of the hero in general. They have to show as little as possible to the Sigismar to give Sigismar no chances of optimal counterplay against whatever the Lindaway is going for, and the Sigismar is going to have no idea what the Lindaway is actually going for until the latest stages of the day possible.
Well, to that point that you make there, actually, about not really wanting to give too much away, it's interesting because we haven't seen a unique yet from Pierre, if I'm not mistaken. We've already seen one of the 3 uniques from Tiago that you are allowed to run in your Alter deck. But whether it's Pierre withholding that information for that exact reason, whether it's because we just haven't found the uniques at this point yet, it's definitely an interesting aspect that we haven't quite been able to see here. We are going to see the activation of the landmark, sacrificing the fleeting jellyfish to get that card draw.
Really interesting to see there that they did not choose to spend 1 mana and make Maw before going for that sacrifice there. That would have turned functionally into a 1 mana 2/2/2 for that token, given that Maw gains the 2 boosts whenever you sacrifice a character. So I'm sort of surprised to not see that, but what they are saying is that they're very heavily valuing this 4 remaining mana. So yeah, I'm very much interested to see what will potentially come out here. We are seeing that Amarok, that is a unique that they potentially have access to on screen, so it could be something like that. I just wonder what value they're going to be able to get out of the cards that are remaining in their hand here.
We are seeing just the payment of 1 here is just going to be that Bumblebee to just try and make sure that we are getting the advance over on that side of the Tumult. It is going to be the 3 mana being paid for. It's not the unique that we were thinking that it might be. It is just going to go ahead and be